Before this video starts, if you enjoy this video, there are many more like it already on the channel, with many more like it to come in the future, so subscribe. I'm trying to hit 100,000 subscribers by the end of the year, so I would really appreciate it. I upload 6 days a week on this channel, so if you're looking for some consistent basketball talk, this is the place for it. Also fuck this mic. God damn it. Fuck this mic stand. As I was saying, also drop a like on this video. It only takes 1 second and it makes a massive difference. I'm gonna buy a new mic stand after this. Real quick, before we start, there is a new episode of the Rusty and Mojo show out right now where we had Kenny, aka King of the Fourth Quarter, on as a guest. We talked about the Bulls, which didn't necessarily age well because then Boylan was fired like a week after. But we also talked about some other stuff like video games, YouTube, and things like that. Here is a quick clip.
No, actually, majority of stuff I watch aren't basketball related.
Yeah, but you do catch every Rusty Buckets video, right?
Of course, like that one video about yep. No, I'm messing around.
It's okay. I know he watches my videos. Why wouldn't he? Thank you for watching, Kenny, because I'm sure you are. Anyways, the link to that is going to be at the top of the description and the top of the pinned comment below, so go give that one a watch. So the other day, I was watching a Blazers game, one of the many where Damian Lillard was going the fuck off, and there was a coach's challenge issued, and I thought out loud to myself, I really like the coach's challenge. And what if the coach's challenge was always a thing? How many games would go differently, and how would those differences affect the legacies of the players involved as well as the league as a whole? And yeah, that's the question I'm going to attempt to answer with this video. That's it. That's the premise. So real quick, let's go over exactly what a coach's challenge is, because it's a new thing that I'm sure many people don't know the exact details of, me among them. So first and foremost, each team gets one coach's challenge, which is pretty limiting in the scope of history that we can look at, because just one poorly officiated game really probably won't be mitigated by one fixed call. Also, it can unfortunately only be used on a call, not a no call. So as much as I want to discuss it, the violation that David Black committed by calling a timeout when there were no more remaining, which would have given the Bulls a 3-1 lead in the second round versus the Cavaliers, cannot be fixed by a coach's challenge. A call must be made, and then a challenge must be issued. A no call cannot be changed. And finally, once a coach's challenge is issued, the refs go to an instant replay and either decide to overturn the call or have it stand as it was. Also, just as a quick side note, I feel like if the coach's challenge was issued and the coach was right and the call was wrong, I feel like he should be able to keep the challenge at least for another go or two, but that's just me. That's not the rule, so the coach gets one challenge, and we're taking the assumption that instant replay technology just exists throughout history. So there are a few calls that I think would make a big difference in NBA history if they went another way. First and foremost, there is the call that is referenced in the thumbnail of this video. In the 1988 NBA Finals, the Bad Boy Pistons and Showtime Lakers faced off, and in the end it was the Lakers who won their last title until the Kobe and Shaq era. That result, however, was bullshit. The Lakers should have one less trophy in their ridiculously huge trophy box, and the Detroit Pistons should have one more in their much more reasonably sized trophy box. The Pistons had a 1-point lead on the Lakers in Game 6 with a 3-2 lead in the series. There were only 27 seconds on the clock. The ball is in Kareem's hands as he was their late game closer. He goes up for the skyhook and gets fouled. Except, no, he wasn't. Bill Laimbeer did not touch Kareem at all. A complete phantom call. And after Kareem ices the free throws, the Lakers tie the series and eventually win the series in Game 7. But if this goes down and the head coach of the Pistons, Chuck Daly, calls for the coach's challenge and the call is overturned, we're going to take the assumption that the Pistons win this game and in turn win this series with the 1-point lead. Now, of course, it's not impossible that they lose in this scenario, but having the final possession, they get 2 free throws and go up 3, and the Lakers would need to hit a 3-pointer in that scenario, so the odds were in the Pistons' favor heavily if that call is not made. If this happens, at least on the surface, it appears that the Bad Boy Pistons three-peat. Kareem and Magic have one less title, which hurts their legacies, and Isaiah Thomas has an extra one. And in a bizarre twist of fate, it's actually Adrian Dantley who probably wins a Finals MVP if this is the outcome. because I honestly think he played better than Thomas in this series. And if you know the history of Adrian Dantley and the Pistons, that is certainly interesting. And actually, when I think about it, maybe the Pistons don't three-peat because moving Dantley was viewed as the turning point that made this Pistons team a legitimate championship team. Trading Adrian Dantley for Mark Aguirre really made a difference, not because Mark was necessarily that much better, but because he fit a whole lot better. And that made a big difference because Dantley was a ball stopper, which fucked up the offense that the Pistons were going for. And if that guy wins a Finals MVP, which again he likely does because he was great in this series, maybe they don't make that move and maybe the Pistons don't actually become better and win those next 2 championships. It's weird how he can be the biggest reason for a team being successful in that finals and just falling just short, but then also be what ended up holding them back later on so he gets traded. It's a weird oxymoron if I'm using that word correctly. Probably not, because I'm an oxymoron. Oh boy. That was, believe it or not, that wasn't scripted, and that's because if I had scripted it, I would have thought about it and cut it. But in terms of league-wide changes and the history of the NBA, I don't know that there'd be that many significant ones outside of maybe the results of the 89 and 90 championships, but that's about it. Like, I don't think this affects how the rest of the 90s go down and onward. I just think it affects some of the legacies of a few players that are involved. Legacy-wise, Kareem and Magic take a hit, and I think an extra title really moves Thomas up the ladder quite a lot, because he would have been the main guy for a three-peat team, which is pretty damn wild. And now this goddamn microphone stand. I can't win. Can't happen. There's nothing I can do. I don't know what the fuck. Yeah, motherfucker? Really? I'm gonna lose my fucking mind. I'm not even. This isn't a bit. I'm gonna lose my fucking mind. What more can I do to make this thing sit in its fucking place? I'm just gonna hold it right here. No, I'm just gonna do this. This fucking mic will not sit still, so I'm just gonna hold it like this for the rest of this goddamn video. Now, let's talk about the 2006 finals matchup between the Mavericks and the Miami Heat. This is one of the most commonly considered series to be rigged. This and the 2002 matchup between the Lakers and Kings series are some of the go-to, well, that was fixed series. Now, in the case of 2002, which I'm sure a lot of you want me to go over, the worst, most egregious sort of foul-related things were the no calls, not the calls themselves. Like Kobe running through Mike Bibby like a linebacker with no call made. Of course, there were plenty of bad calls, but not calls that would turn the tide of the series if they were overturned. The no calls were in that category. As for the 2006 finals, I would not downright say that that series was rigged, because I really don't believe it was, but there were some questionable calls, especially a lot more in Miami's favor. And one particularly big one came in Game 6 with the Heat up just 1 point. Wade comes around the screen, puts his arm out, runs into Dirk, and Dirk is called for the foul. This foul put the Heat up 3 and ended up winning them that series, as that was the final game played. If the offensive foul is called, the Mavs get the ball with a full clock, with Dirk going off that game and being the clutch player we all know he is. Unfortunately, the Heat still had a foul to give, so it wouldn't have resulted in free throws, but it would have resulted in a chance, and that would have made a huge difference. And let's say the Mavericks come back and win this series because of this one overturned call. That really shifts some legacies for 2 top 20 players in Dirk and Wade. Because Dirk gets an extra title and Wade does not get a title that pretty much single-handedly carries his legacy. Like, that 2006 win was so fucking impressive that it alone puts him top 30. Remove that and I don't know where Wade ranks all time, and if Dirk has 2, I imagine he moves up a few spots. That one is a bit weaker, but what I realized actually trying to find examples for this video was that actual calls were not all that common. It was a whole lot of no calls that really made big differences, such as that Kobe example that I brought up earlier. Which makes me wonder if the rule should be revised to include no calls. Like, I think the coach of the Kings should be able to overturn Kobe running into Bibby and give the Kings the ball. Because the whole point of this rule is to basically counter some of the RNG is the term for gaming. I don't know what you'd say in real life, like just a factor that's outside of your control with a ref making a dumb call and the coach is able to challenge that. It's nice to have that counter to some ref bullshit. But making that rule only applicable after a foul is called is a little bit limiting in the scope of how effective it can be. And in terms of how this would affect change throughout league history, sure, there are specific calls to point to in the finals and some of the biggest moments in league history, but in terms of the butterfly effect, the prospect of this rule always existing has a scope that honestly couldn't be comprehended. Because every possession matters, every game matters, every call matters, especially in the playoffs. It may not feel like it, but missing a wide open layup in the first minute of the game is just as bad as missing a wide open layup at the end of the game. It just feels more significant at the end, but in reality, 2 points is 2 points on the board, and if you're removing those 2 points because of a stupid mistake, that mistake can cost you. So, one bad call in the first minute of the game can matter just as much as a bad call in the last minute of the game. That's another important distinction, because who's to say that the coach does not use his challenge earlier on in the game, and in those moments that I mentioned earlier, they no longer have the challenge available. Like in that Game 6 Lakers versus Kings, even if you were allowed to challenge a no call in a game that is commonly considered to be the most poorly officiated in the history of basketball, who is to say that the coach of the Kings, Rick Adelman, doesn't use that challenge earlier in a game that already had a bunch of questionable calls? Who says that Chuck Daly does not use his coach challenge earlier? Who says that Rick Carlisle doesn't? It's really hard to say. What I can confidently say is there would be an endless list of unforeseen changes that just cannot be predicted whatsoever. And that is the nature of what ifs, but in this case, it's such a small rule that would really have massive ramifications that just cannot be predicted because it so heavily relies on a game-to-game basis and not broad spectrums. So what if the coach's challenge had always existed? Well, shit would be drastically different from what we know it as now, just can't really point to exactly how different and in what ways it would be different. Or at least, that's the excuse I'm making for not finding a whole lot of concrete examples. Also, real quick, I want to shout out my friend Alum, aka Ask the Truth, for convincing me to actually make this video. When I wondered out loud what if this thing had existed this whole time, he told me I should make a video about that. So go subscribe to his YouTube channel. He makes pretty good NBA content sometimes. So subscribe to turn that sometimes into frequently so he fixes his upload schedule. But that is the end of this video. Please be sure to like and subscribe for more NBA content like this, and cue the outro music.